Barefoot shoes are expensive. They are so expensive that a lot of people are put off before even experiencing any of the insane benefits that come from wearing them. These ones, my favorite at the moment, cost $155. So I started thinking, can I make some at home on the cheap from these for less than the cost of these? Then we're going to see if they can compete in any way, shape or form. I'm also going to be making a huge channel announcement. Before we get into any of this, the argument for wearing barefoot shoes is really compelling. I did a full video explaining that. You can check that out pressing the link up here or down in the bio below. Now, when I started thinking about this video, it took a little while to figure out the donor shoes. They needed to be cheap. They had to be cheaper than the industry standard for barefoot shoes, or there just wouldn't be any point. They also had to be accessible and widely available, something that everyone watching this video can access fairly easily. Above all though, the customization had to be easy. I am a man ape. I have no motor skills whatsoever, and I saw all of these videos with people with scalpels and fabrics, and frankly, I'd sooner pay somebody else to do it for me than go down that route. So after a little bit of research, it led me to these. A staple of my childhood and skater boy dreams. These are the authentic era Vans, but if you don't have these, you can also use the old school line. And even though these might not look perfectly suited to being barefoot, they're actually perfect conversion candidates. I picked them up new for about 100 Australian dollars, or about $70 US, half the price. But you can also find them a lot cheaper used on eBay or Facebook Marketplace, which has the added benefit of reducing your carbon footprint and supporting sustainable practices. They are zero drop, same as the Vivos, and although aesthetically they look like they've got this absolute wedge of a base, the sole itself is actually only 7mm thick. And although yes, I'll concede that that's double that of the Primus Lite, it's still quite competitive in the barefoot space, especially when you think about how much money you're saving. The big difference is in the cushioning, and when we strip that away, we should be left with very thin, flexible, cheap barefoot Frankensteins. Big question, how do you do that? That's it. That is all you need to do in terms of modification to make these go from thick, inflexible clogs to very thin, nimble, barefoot alternatives. And the key to that is just in looking at the thickness of this insole. So then the question becomes, are these going to be as good as purpose-made, expensive barefoot shoes? Before we answer that, I have a huge channel announcement to make. You might have already noticed, but I've changed the channel name from Good Time Hunting to the Barefoot Strength Project. Why is that? Well, I really want my channel to be a place where people can come to learn about natural movement, barefoot shoes, and also how to become stronger and more capable in their everyday lives. Though Good Time Hunting was an excellent name, the Barefoot Strength Project better reflects the focus and direction of my content, and it's more aligned to my true passion in helping other people move better and tap into their full potential. The most important part of this channel is you, the community, so I'd love to hear what you think about the name change in the comment section down below this video. To celebrate the new name, I'm running a $1,000 US mystery box giveaway competition at 10,000 subscribers, where I'm going to be giving away a mystery box packed full of barefoot goodies worth $1,000 US to a lucky subscriber. To enter that competition, subscribe to the channel by pressing this little button down here and checking out our future videos for more information on what's included in the prize. If you're already a subscriber, let me know what you think about the name change for a free second entry. I, for one, am really excited about what the future holds for the Barefoot Strength Project, and thank you again so much for supporting me in that, which starts with finishing this video and answering the question, are these shoes as good as the purpose-made barefoot shoes from VivoBarefoot? And we're going to start it off by taking a look at the weight with a scale. First off, the Vans. This has had the insole removed for a fair comparison. This shoe weighs 424 grams. That means for both pairs of shoes, you're looking at a combined weight of 848 grams. The VivoBarefoot, on the other hand, that one weighs in at 229 grams. Double that, and we're looking at around about 540 grams.
Oh, that's pathetic.
Which is a significant weight saving. Although 300 grams might not sound like a lot, particularly if, like me, you're a big, heavy guy, but the reason that it's important is because of the cumulative weight that you end up carrying on longer walks or hikes, etc. If there's a weight difference of, let's say, 100 grams between the shoes, for each stride you're carrying an extra 100 grams with it. For every 2 strides, so right foot, left foot, that's another 200 grams. And when you multiply that, say, against 10,000, 20,000 steps, all of a sudden you're adding an extra 1 ton, 2 ton, 3 tons of load to your walk. We know for injury prevention, the best thing that you can do is reduce the total volume on the working muscles. Wearing lighter shoes will definitely help with that. If this is something to kick around town, then it's going to be fairly negligible. But if you're planning on using these sorts of shoes for longer distance hikes, you might start to notice that weight difference in the foot. The second variable that we need to take a look into is sole thickness. The thinner the sole, the more feel you're going to get from the environment. When you step on a twig, you're going to feel the twig. When you step on a stone, you're going to feel the stone. That proprioception is what makes these shoes so valuable. They connect you to your environment. So, are these comparable? On paper, the sole on this should be about 7 millimeters thick. That's about double that you'd find in the Primus Lite. The easiest way to find out though is going to be chopping these in half and taking a look. So I've got my trusty pair of scissors, I've got a strong grip, and yeah, let's see if we can get through. I'm going to go and find something that's a little bit more aggressive. While we're talking about it, one of the other factors that you need to consider when it comes to the thickness of the sole is whether or not it's zero drop. Now, both of these shoes are zero drop. The reason that that's important is it changes your stride. Drop means the angle at which the heel is raised. When the heel is raised, it encourages you to change your gait, which is not a good thing. So I'm going to try finding some way to cut these shoes straight down the middle, and we'll check to make sure they are zero drop and also how thick the soles are. Slightly more aggressive, but should work just fine. I'm not going to be chopping my Vivos in half because they're my favorite shoes, and frankly I don't want to spend another 200 or whatever it is dollars on them. But these, I think they're fair game. So start with this. Well, more aggressive again. Well, this does not seem to be working. More aggressive again. Sometimes less is in fact more. So I'm swapping out for a sharp knife and a saw. And instead of going straight down the middle, because I'm hand sawing it, I'm just going to go straight across the toe. And we may do a cutaway to talk about the toe box before I completely cut through it. Oh yeah. Oh no. Wadam. And we're away, or rather at least half of the way. And I'm going to take a second just to detour into the world of toe boxes. Now, a toe box is a fundamental part of a barefoot shoe. It's what allows your toes to spread out as you're wearing it, which in turn gives you a wider base of support and better mimics a more natural foot position. These are not made to have a wide toe box. It is a uniquely barefoot shoe design point, and for this, which is slightly more mainstream, I should imagine the manufacturers would consider them to look a bit too flipperish, so they've gone for a more traditional narrow toe position. Now, if I put the Vans insole, the one that came out of this shoe, on top of the insole that came out of this shoe, you can see fairly quickly all this extra space that you get in the Vivo that you do not get in the Vans. What that does is it pinches your toes together, and it can be a leading cause of bunions, hammer toes, ingrown toenails, all that sort of stuff as your feet are squeezed together. Here are the two shoes side by side. I can see that on this side, my toes, I can manually spread them out and they still fit within the insole of the VivoBarefoot, but by comparison, my toe is immediately squeezed in just by the shape of the shoe, and if we can find my little toe, that's crammed in as well, and there's nowhere near as much space between each of my individual toes as there is in the Vivo. But we digress, and we're going to go back to taking a look at the actual sole thickness, which means a bit more cutting on my part. Yeah, that's some tough rubber though. Bring out the heavy guns. Oh, bloody hell. There's a layer of latex in there as well. It makes it a real bugger to cut through. So if there's one thing we know about the build quality of these, it's that they're gonna last you a long time if you do decide to go down this route. I don't know how Vans makes any money. All right, well, I suppose I'm just gonna have to talk and work at the same time. So the other big consideration that we need to think about is the feel of these shoes. In my personal experience, you get much more feedback through the ground in the Vivos. In part, that's to do with the sole thickness. The Vans also seems like it uses latex, which I'll show you once I've finished cutting through this bloody thing. Whereas the Vivo just uses a rubber composite. Now, the rubber composite on the bottom of the Vivo is insanely durable. I've had those now for about 2 years. And if you just take a look at the tread, it looks barely broken. It's completely indestructible as far as I'm concerned. That said, the Vans don't really seem to be lacking. As a barefoot veteran, I can definitely feel the difference between the two shoes. The Vans is, it provides much less feedback through the ground, whereas the Vivo provides a heap of feedback. And if you're new to the world of barefoot, if you're just starting out, or if this is going to be a first pair of barefoot shoes for you, I'd say the Vans are perfectly sufficient. The Vivos sometimes can be a little bit too aggressive. They can give a little bit too much feedback. Your feet can get a little bit sore on longer walks, or if you're planning on wearing them all day. Unless, of course, you've spent a good amount of time, 6 months or so, transitioning over. They are a very solid pair of barefoot shoes, but certainly not for everybody. Physically perspiring now. Right, well, that took me the best part of 20 minutes to cut through this sole. So if you haven't already, press like, hit subscribe, because that was a painful experience for me. But we have now finally managed to get through the incredibly durable Vans sole. To see just how thick it is, let's have a closer look. First off the bat, you've obviously got this cloth inner. This is to keep your foot separate from the rubber, keep it breathable, stop your feet sweating too much. We then got a layer of latex. Now, this is for absorption, impact protection, and probably a bit of puncture resistance as well, just in case something does come up and through the rubber. And then obviously we've got the rubber sole as well. Now, a good amount of this chunkiness is actually taken up by the sole, which is going to break down over time. But if we were to get the tape measure out and just take a look at the distance from the top of the cloth to the very bottom of the sole, we are looking at a total of 7 millimeters. All in, we're looking at a pretty razor thin sole. It does give you a good amount of ground feedback, not as much as the Vivo, but certainly enough to be passable. Following on from sole thickness, we need to talk about the flexibility. Again, another huge component of barefoot shoes. The more flexible the shoes are, the more they're going to mold to the sticks, twigs, stones that you're walking over as you move through the environment around you. Now, as you just saw, the VivoBarefoot is insanely flexible. You can ball it up with very little to no effort whatsoever. It snaps right back into position. You can twist it, you can bop it, you can do everything that you can imagine. The Vans, although these are brand new, do seem a little bit stiffer. They do still have a good amount of flexibility, particularly when you're trying to fold them in half, but you'll notice that the toe aspect is quite a lot stiffer than on the Vivo, which just bends immediately wherever you push down on it. That doesn't happen quite the same way in the Vans. There's a lot more force that has to be extorted, but when it comes to the twisting through the mid part of the shoe, we've got loads of flexibility. The heel is a little bit stiff, the toe is a little bit stiff, but by and large, I'm actually really impressed by that. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised at all as I started wearing these if they started to soften up and we started seeing a little bit more flexibility come through in the sole, so they become even closer to the VivoBarefoot. The other marker that we were looking at is aesthetics. Now, I've been wearing barefoot shoes for quite a long time. Even I can see that the Vans are probably the better looking and more in keeping with what we would define as normal beauty standards or normal fashion standards. Personally, I don't really give a shit about that. I would rather have something that function the way that I want it to rather than looks pretty. That said, if form is super important to you, I personally would say that the Vans probably come out on top. Just the combination of the colorways, they've got this nice thick aesthetic looking sole, they've got better color combinations, all that sort of stuff. They're just a good looking shoe. They've been around for generations as well, so you know that the design is going to stand the test of time. And if you get these now in 3, 4, 5 years, as long as they're still working, they're still going to look just as cool as they did on day dot. The Vivos, they're a bit more of a statement piece. I've had loads of people come up to me and ask me about them, asking if they're those barefoot shoes, etc. The big giveaway, in my opinion, is the thinness of the sole, but also the toe box as well. They do look slightly more flipperish, but that is an important feature in order to be able to let your toes spread out. To me, as somebody that's been wearing barefoot shoes now for a long time, we're talking multiples of years, this feels like a step backwards. It feels like a regression. It's something that I may wear on a night out if there's a strict dress code to a club or whatever and I can't get away with these trainer looking things. but I would, generally speaking, avoid utilizing the Vans purely because of that sole thickness. 7mm to me is just a little bit too thick when I know that there's a 3 or 4mm out there. Also, that toe box is just a little bit too narrow for me. Again, somebody that's been wearing these barefoot shoes for a long time now, I've got multiple pairs, I'm just not going to turn to the Vans because I do feel like my toes get pinched in a little bit. That said, for you, if you haven't yet taken the plunge into barefoot shoes, if you're still toying around with the idea, this is a very, very solid option. It is half the price of the VivoBarefoots. The only thing that you have to do to make them more barefoot is take out the insole. They immediately become zero drop. The sole becomes comparable to the Vivo. You get much more ground feel. It will give you the opportunity to experience the beginner aspect of going truly barefoot, but without compromising too much in terms of aesthetic or potentially exposing yourself to the injuries that we sometimes see when people make the transition too quickly. If it was my money, I'd buy the Vivos. You can use my discount code GT10 at checkout to get you an extra 10% off, which does make them a little bit more affordable. But if budget is a serious constraint, if you're brand new to the world of barefoot shoes, if you're not yet ready to take the plunge into something more like this, then these are a fantastic option, something you should definitely look into, particularly if you can get them on sale or on the cheap like I did. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to hit me up in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Can't wait to see you again soon.